Hello everyone, my name is Anitsu, and I'm back with another episode of Spoiler Sundays. So this is the time of the week where I take a look at all of the spoilers that we had and, well, talk about them. So right now we're in mid-season of spoiling EX03, Draconic Roar, and that set is going to be a dragon-based set and is looking to be pretty interesting, upgrading and iterating on a lot of current and existing decks, which is usually what supplementary sets tend to do, especially since they're smaller sets. So we have a lot of cards to talk about, but first, before I get into those spoilers, we actually did get a new promo revealed from Ghost Games in the form of Epsimon. Right now, as of episode 31, we have not seen this character yet, but I'm excited to see him in action in anime form, and his card is actually pretty interesting. So for a level 3 black rookie, stats aren't anything too special, but he does have a unique on-play ability where we get to reveal the top card of the opponent's security. Then, if that card is a Digimon, we get to draw one card and return that card face down on the top of their security stack. So this is actually the first time we have interaction with the opponent's security, more than just attacking it and straight up deleting it. So it's just good to know and good to have information to be able to figure out how we want to progress with that top security. And I don't know how he's going to be distributed when we finally get him in English, but I'm excited to see what impact this little guy is going to have, if he's going to have any at all. So, without further ado, on to the actual spoilers from EX03, starting off with Epsimon. So, we do get a new version of Epsimon, and with that, it looks like we're going to be getting more D-Brigade support. So, it's really cool that we're getting more D-Brigade support, considering we haven't really gotten any meaningful support since their basic release all the way back in BT4. So, what this Epsimon is doing is it's going to be a new Digitama for them with the inheritable ability where during the opponent's turn, while you have another Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits in play, then this Digimon gains Reboot. So it's just adding to the plethora of tools that D-Brigades is playing around with. I don't know if this is going to be that necessary or that great for that deck, but it's definitely something for that deck to think about. Next up, we have a new version of Dramon. So we already knew based on Epsimon that we'd be getting Dramon support, and well, here's a new one. This Dramon, stat-wise, isn't really doing anything too special, but he does have the Decoy D-Brigade's ability. So what Decoy usually does is it acts as some form of protection, where if the Digimon was going to get deleted, then you basically delete this Digimon instead. We saw Decoy work with the colors in the past, and it looks like with this version of Dramon, we could see Decoy work with traits as well. So this card is just trying to help protect all of your other D-Brigades, which is pretty good because you want to try to keep your higher stages alive as easily and efficiently as you possibly can. So I think Decoy works best on these low-level bodies because they're still going to have to get rid of these bodies in order to get rid of your bigger bodies, and that's just attention taken away off of the big bodies for a little bit. Next up, we have a new version of Dramon. So this new version of Dramon is going to be the Black Jammer. I don't necessarily think we had like the level 4 Black Jammer that all of the other colors did, but it's nice to see that the Dramon is going to be that Black level 4 Jammer. On top of which, he does have an inheritable ability that, of course, is going to be playing into D-Brigades, because it states that during your turn, once per turn, when you play another Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits, then that Digimon gains Rush for the turn. So this underneath our stack will just make our level 3 Dramons even more aggressive because they'll gain the Rush. I don't necessarily know how important that Rush ability is going to be for anything outside of our level 3s, but it's a really powerful ability to up the overall aggression of D-Brigades because it is a more low to the ground aggro style of deck based on all of the previous Dramons and D-Brigade cards that we already had. Next up, we get a new version of Dramon. So this new version of Dramon stat-wise isn't doing anything special for a black level 5 Digimon, but it does have a nice Wind Digivolving ability and a good inheritable ability. So its Wind Digivolving ability states that we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck. We get to play one Digimon with a play cost of 5 or less that has D-Brigade in its traits from among them without paying its play cost, and then we get to trash the rest. So this is helping fuel our trash, this is helping us climb our stages, and this is helping us get an extra body on the field, which in combination with Dramon could actually give it rush. So that's kind of the whole intended purpose of this evolution line as far as I can tell, and I think it's a good direction for D-Brigades to take because it's kind of acting similar to the old one, where it's just trying to have bodies on the field to utilize in various different ways. Then on top of that, its inheritable ability for when we actually do go into the level 6 states that during your turn once per turn, when one of our Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits attacks, then we get to reveal the top 2 cards of our deck, and we get to play one Commandramon from among them for free, and then trash the rest. So again, it's just playing into kind of what Tank Dramon was trying to do, which is bolster the forces and spawn extra bodies. And then to round out what we got with the D-Brigade package, we got a new version of Dark Dramon. So Dark Dramon is going to be one of the SRs in the set, so he's going to be a pretty powerful Digimon. And stat-wise, he's actually pretty strong, considering he evos for 5, has 12,000 DP, for a black level 6, which might seem a little bit expensive, but he does have an ability to help reduce the cost of his evolution to make it a little bit more palatable. So what his ability states is when one of your Digimon would digivolve into this card by returning 5 cards with D-Brigade from their traits from your trash to the top of your deck. For each card you returned, you get to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1. So you could use this first ability to reduce or basically make his evolution cheaper or free. So that's already pretty good, considering we could just easily climb our stages, get up into a Tank Dramon, then digivolve for free from Tank Dramon into Dark Dramon, and then be able to utilize Dark Dramon right away, which is kind of similar to what the old Dark Dramon was doing. Then on top of that, in terms of his actual abilities, he has this nice ability that happens during your turn once per turn. When you play another Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost lower or equal to than the Digimon that you played's play cost. Then we get to unsuspend this Digimon. So the whole idea is you're going to swing with your Dark Dramon, ideally play a Command Dramon, utilize Dark Dramon's ability to delete a Digimon on the opponent's field, and then unsuspend this card for another attack. So that's just the whole intended line of play with how Dark Dramon wants to play, and I think it's going to be a really good inclusion into what D-Brigades already wants to do, just because it's a very strong level 6 Digimon. Next, we got a new version of Agumon. So this is another yellow Agumon, and this is going to be playing around with the 4 Great Dragons deck. So he, stat-wise, isn't doing anything too special, but he does have a nice inheritable ability where during your turn once per turn, when you play a Digimon with 4 Great Dragons in its traits, or you place a trial of the 4 Great Dragons in your battle area, then you get to draw 1 card. So it's just acting as a solid card draw engine for what that deck wants to do, which is just kind of be able to play your 4 Great Dragons. Next up, continuing with that evolution line, we have V-Dramon. So this new version of V-Dramon is a yellow V-Dramon. This is just another card to interact with the 4 Great Dragons deck. So it has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add 1 yellow card with Dramon in its name, and 1 card with 4 Great Dragons in its traits from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this is going to be acting as that deck's dedicated digger to try to find its parts and pieces. Then on top of that, its inheritable skill for when we're climbing our stages states that during your turn once per turn, when you place a Digimon with 4 Great Dragons in its trait in play, then that Digimon gains Rush, so that way we could attack with it right away, which is kind of what the deck is trying to set up, is just the ability to be able to play your 4 Great Dragons. Next, we got Arrow V-Dramon to continue the evolutionary line. So this Arrow V-Dramon has 2 abilities native to him and 1 inheritable. So his inheritable ability, just to get that out of the way, states that during your opponent's turn, all of your Digimon with 4 Great Dragons in their traits gains the blocker ability. It's just making it so that our higher level Digimon are also going to be acting as our primary defensive tools, which usually that's where you want your defensive tools to be, because as we saw, there's so much low level removal that anything weaker than a level 5 body with blocker just really isn't worth playing anymore, just because of how the game changed. But it's still nice to see that they're trying to include some different types of defensive tools for us to utilize, especially in this style of deck, because it's a slightly different style, kind of taking more of a Mega Zeus style of approach. except it's centered around the 4 Great Dragons and Trial of the 4 Great Dragons. So it's 2 native abilities. The first one is a when digivolving ability, where if we don't have a Trial of the 4 Great Dragons in play, then we get to play one from our hand. We won't be able to get like whatever effect we're getting off of it for playing it, but still just having a Trial of the 4 Great Dragons in play for free is going to be really, really good and important for how this deck wants to function. Then on top of that, it has an ability that triggers during the opponent's turn, where while you have a Digimon with 4 Great Dragons in its traits in play, or a Trial of the 4 Great Dragons in its traits in your battle area, then this Digimon also gains the blocker ability. So this is just going to act as the primary defensive tool to not only help set up your trial, but to stop some of the opponent's aggression, so you could then trigger your trial, because I'm guessing it's going to have a delay ability. And to complete the evolutionary line, it looks like Dramon is going to be the primary one you actually want to digivolve into, because he does have a when digivolving ability, where we get to return 1 card with 4 Great Dragons in its traits from our trash to our hand, which we saw on some of the other ones that they do want to delete themselves, so this is just a good card to help grab them back, to continue the pressure and continue the game plan. Then on top of that, he has a nice when attacking ability that's acting as some nice control, where one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 6,000 DP for the turn. Then by returning 1 Magnadramon, Azulongmon, Megidramon from our trash to the bottom of our deck, then we get to trash the top 2 cards of the opponent's security, acting as not only some control, but some extra aggression as well, just because trashing the opponent's security is super important, because we're not actually triggering any of the security checks, and if we trash their security and they have 0 security, then that attack could just win us the game relatively easily. So I think this is going to be a very fun and powerful deck to be messing around with. And speaking of our other 4 Great Dragons, the last one that we got is going to be Magnadramon. So Magnadramon is going to fit online with some of the other ones, where it has an on-play ability, where all of the opponent's Digimon gain security tech -1 until the end of the opponent's next turn. And then if this card was played by the effects of Trial of the 4 Great Dragons, then they'll get security tech -2 instead. So it's just trying to stop some of the opponent's aggression while we line up some of our plays to be able to aggress easily onto the opponent. Then it has an on-delete ability, where if we don't have a Trial of the 4 Great Dragons in our battle area, then we get to put one from our hand into the battle area, acting very similar to the other 2, to be able to reset up our trials to continue with the engine of the deck. And speaking of our trials, next we actually know what the Trials of the 4 Great Dragons actually does. So this is a 8-costed yellow option card with the main ability of drawing 1 and then placing this card into the battle area. So at worst, it's replacing itself if we have to hardcast it from our hand, and then it'll go into the battle area to set up its delay ability, which allows us to play 1 card with 4 Great Dragons and its traits from our hand for free. That Digimon played by this card effect can't digivolve into a level 7 and is deleted at the end of the opponent's turn. So this is a good card to just sit on the field with, and this is kind of why we saw with Arrow Veedramon, we want to have some blocker and some defensive gameplay just to try to stall the opponent so we could actually utilize the delay ability. So I think this is going to be a pretty powerful card and a really interesting toolbox style of deck, depending on which dragon you get when and how you want to play it, just because we don't have to use this card right away, and we still have other things that are really powerful that yellow can be doing. Then the security ability, like all of the other cards with delay, just put this into the battle area so that way we could utilize its delay ability to get the ball rolling and do what we need to do with the deck. And then to round out what that Trials deck is trying to do, we did get another option card for Dramon in the form of Fatal Flame. So Fatal Flame is a 5-costed yellow option with the main ability of one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 6,000 DP for the turn. Then we get to return 1 card with 4 Great Dragons from our trash to our hand, and the security ability activates its main. So this is really good at just grabbing back any of our 4 Great Dragons, which 3 of them have on-delete abilities because they want to be played off of our Trials, and this also could grab back our Trials because our Trials is part 4 Great Dragons. So this might be a really good supplementary option to not only help with the control aspect of what the deck is trying to do, because you could use this in combination with Dramon to be able to minus 12,000 DP, but just as a standalone option to be able to grab back our dragons is really, really good. Next, we have Pamumon. So Pamumon is going into that Vegetation deck, which we saw in BT10 was all about suspending your Digimon to try to gain some various other benefits with the whole Bloom Lord package. So what this card is doing is it's actually going into that style of deck where during your turn, when an effect suspends this Digimon, then we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, so that way it's just playing along with what Bloom Lordmon is doing. Next, we have a new version of Parasauromon. So this is a green level 4 Digimon. Stats aren't doing anything too interesting, and it does look like it wants to fit into that Bloom Lord deck. So what this card is doing is it has an ability where during your turn, when you would play a green Digimon card by suspending this Digimon, we get to reduce the play cost by 1. So it's just making whatever we're playing a little bit easier to use, which is kind of what that deck wants and needs. Then its inheritable ability states that during your turn, once per turn, when an effect suspends one of your Digimon, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, which just plays into how green likes to play, which is just trying to beat up the opponent's Digimon and outpace and outtempo them. And then to round out what that deck is trying to do, we did get a new level 6 for it to play with in the form of Hydramon. So Hydramon is going to be a level 6 green Digimon. Stats aren't anything too special. Evos for 5, which is quite a lot, but that's kind of par for the course because it's green. And then it has 13,000 DP, which is pretty strong. Then its when Digivolving ability states we get to suspend one Digimon. Doesn't specify if it's yours or the opponent's, so you could use this to trigger some of your abilities or try to suspend one of the opponents to, well, beat it up. Then it has an ability where during all turns, when an opponent's Digimon is suspended, we get to gain 1 memory for each of our other suspended Digimon with Plant, Vegetation, or Fairy in its traits that we have in play. So it is trying to support the whole swarm the field and try to gain us back some extra memory. Then on top of that, it has an ability that triggers at the end of your turn. Once per turn, if you have 2 or more suspended Digimon with Plant, Vegetation, or Fairy in their traits, then we could return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck, acting as some really good removal, which is something we don't really have a whole lot of in green, so I think this is going to be a really powerful card to go inside of that Bloom Lord deck. Next, we have a new version of Guilmon. So this new version of Guilmon is going to be a 2-colored rookie, but it only digivolves for 1 on top of a purple egg. So that's kind of weird, but that's okay because we could shore up its high cost for a rookie with its other alternative evolution where we could digivolve it for 0 on top of a Gigimon. So we do have Gigimon in both purple and red, so this just kind of wants to play with those cards, and this looks to be supporting more of the purple side of things, where it has a nice on-delete ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP, which is part red, and then if no Digimon was deleted by this card effect, we get to trash the top 2 cards of both players' decks, which is the purple part of the ability, making it a very well-rounded Guilmon for us to try to use, more so as sacrificial fodder, which makes me think that it wants to lean a little bit more into the purple side of things, which is usually what Chaos Gallantmon and Megidramon is trying to do. Next, we have a new version of Growlmon. So this new Growlmon takes some very similar notes from the Guilmon, where it digivolves for 3 on top of a level 3 purple Digimon, which is relatively expensive for a level 4, but it is a 2-color Digimon sticking in that purple and red, which is, again, what Gallantmon and Chaos Gallantmon are trying to do. Then you do have the alternative evolution cost, where you could digivolve it for 2 on top of a Guilmon, which is pretty good, so that way you have efficient ways to be able to digivolve into this card. And then it has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. Then if this effect didn't delete a Digimon, then we get to trash the top 2 cards of both players' decks, feeding into what kind of Megidramon is trying to be doing. Then on top of that, it has an inheritable ability where when attacking once per turn by deleting one of your other Digimon, which is a very purple thing to do, we get to have this Digimon gain security attack +1, so it's acting very similarly to the purple Growlmon that we saw all the way back in BT5, supporting more of the purple package. And then we have a new version of War Growlmon to round out what the new Guilmon support is trying to do. So it, again, digivolves for 4 on top of a level 4, which is relatively expensive, but it is, again, another 2-color Digimon, and it has the alternative Digivolution cost, where we could digivolve it for 3 on top of a level 4 Growlmon. then it doesn't have any inheritable abilities, but it does have a really good when digivolving ability where we get to trash the top 3 cards from both players' decks. Then if the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, then we get to play 1 Guilmon or Tocado from our hand or trash for free, which is pretty good because it's just spawning some extra resources for us to utilize. So this is supposed to spawn the brand new level 3, this could spawn the purple level 3 Guilmon, this could spawn red Guilmon, it doesn't necessarily matter. There's just a whole bunch of very powerful Guilmons that we could try to take advantage of, let alone being able to play our Tocados is super important because Tocado is going to help us gain some blitz ability to be able to then digivolve on top of this card into whatever Gallantmon type card we want to use, so that way he could swing right away with. So I think that this is going to be a pretty good card to think about including in a Guilmon-based deck. Next, we have a new version of Baby Dramon as a blue Digitama for the set. So what this card is doing is it is interacting with our Dramons and Epsimon. So this is soft confirmation that Epsimon is going to be in the set, and it's actually going to be a really good card to help with the overall DP of our Digimon, which is something blue generally doesn't do, let alone do well. So its inheritable ability states that during all turns, which is really nice, once per turn, when this Digimon has Dramon or Epsimon in its name and becomes unsuspended, which is a very blue thing to do, then this Digimon gains plus 1000 DP for the turn, so it is a temporary buff, but the fact that we could utilize it on both our turns and the opponent's turn to make our Digimon stronger and more obnoxious to deal with is usually a good thing, especially since blue has multiple different ways on being able to unsuspend our Digimon. And then the last card that we got spoiled is going to be a brand new version of Dracomon. So Dracomon, like the Guilmon, is a 2-color rookie. This time it's in green and blue, and it digivolves for 1 off of any green or blue egg, but we could digivolve it for 0 on top of a Baby Dramon. So it really wants to be played with Baby Dramon. Then on top of that, it has an on-play ability, so you could just ignore trying to digivolve it if you really wanted to, and just hard play it, where we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add a blue or a green Digimon with Dramon in its name, and 1 card with Epsimon in its name from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom in any order. So again, this is just trying to lean into what Epsimon is doing, leading me to think that Epsimon is still going to be part blue. I don't know if he's actually going to be part red or part green, but it's interesting to think that we are going to probably see Epsimon sooner rather than later, probably as one of the set's secret rares. Then it has a nice inheritable ability where during all turns once per turn, when one of our Digimon with Dramon or Epsimon in its name becomes suspended, then we get to have that Digimon gain plus 1000 DP for the turn. So it's just trying to, again, DP boost those types of Digimon, rounding out how strong we could try to make our cards. And I'm curious to see what Epsimon is actually going to do to round out what this package is supposed to support. But for the most part, what we got is all pretty interesting. I do like all of the new decks that they're going to be trying to make, and the fact that they are supporting lots of older decks as well. It's usually really, really welcoming to see them utilize cards that we already have in possibly new and different ways. I think that the Guilmon stuff going into a more purple Guilmon-based deck seems to be pretty good and interesting with how those new ones want to go, and then seeing more Commandramons to help round out what Commandramons is actually going to try to do is always a nice thing, because it always felt like an incomplete package that you just shoved into something else that was, again, incomplete to try to help round out what a deck could do for utilizing incomplete packages. But regardless, Epsimon is going to be an interesting card to see when we actually see it, and we'll probably get more support for a lot of these new decks in BT11, because that's usually their trend. They'll start something in one set and then finish it in another. And speaking of BT11, we did actually get confirmation that BT11 is coming, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. So once spoiler season for EX03 wraps up, then we're probably going to jump into BT11 spoilers. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.